Welcome to the April 16th.
Thank you.
I like your voice change. That was great.
I sound good, don't I?
Yeah,
Good.
you sounded good.
I speak 5 languages also, by the way. Welcome to the April 16th, 2026 meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. Moving forward to take a roll call.
Commissioner Laird. Present. Commissioner Eddie Smith. Commissioner Carter.
Present.
You have, 2 members present. You have 4.
Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners before we begin? Commissioner Eddie Smith notified us of his absence ahead of today, and he is excused. The Business Operation Committee will hear several updates from staff on the agenda today. First, we will hear from the Executive Director's operational update from Tess Stovall, including votes on the interagency agreement with the Tennessee Language Center and Power School. Then the Commission's Director of Finance and Operation, Mr. Lawrence Walker, will present budget updates for fiscal year 26. Do we have any questions or comments on the agenda before we vote to approve? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I will second. Yeah, that's okay. I will second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the agenda is approved. The minutes of the meeting held on January the 22nd, 2026 have been provided. Does anyone have any comments or edits to make regarding the prior minutes before we proceed? There being none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the January 2026 meeting?
So moved.
I will second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. The first item on our agenda is an operational update from our Executive Director, Tess Stovall. Tess, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Carter. Good afternoon. I'm excited to provide this operational update to the committee. First, I wanted to provide a staffing update. So we have filled the Federal Programs Coordinator position since the January 2026 meeting. Ariana Cahoon is with us as our Federal Programs Coordinator. We're also in the process of wrapping up the hiring for the Manager of Grants and Fiscal Monitoring role. Both of these roles are a part of the expansion that the General Assembly provided to us in terms of expansion of positions for FY26 to support the growth of the Commission's responsibility. We've also recently launched the hiring process for a new authorizing project coordinator. Andre Maneda, who is with us, has actually been accepted into a PhD program in the fall, so he's going to be leaving us, and we are currently hiring for that to backfill that role. We have provided an updated organizational chart, and also it's linked to the website. I wanted to now shift to a procurement update. So we're now evaluating procurement needs for FY27, and there are 2 agreements or proposals that will need the Commission's approval and the committee's approval here today. So first is with the Tennessee Language Center. So we have an interagency agreement with the Language Center to cover all interpretation and translation needs for both the agency and also our district functions. We have established an interagency agreement with them since FY23, so this is in essence just a continuation of that agreement with a maximum liability of $40,000. The next agreement that's here for committee approval is with Power School. So Power School is our student information system. We are under a Department of Education contract. So every few years, the Department of Education sends out an RFP for vendors and then signs contracts with vendors that then districts can opt into. So currently, since we are with Power School from a continuity perspective, we're going to continue with Power School for the upcoming school year. But Lawrence Walker and his team, as a matter of due diligence, will be meeting with all vendors that are approved under the department's SIS vendor process that were just released this spring to evaluate pricing and if there's something in the future that we might want to make a move. That's not happening for the next upcoming school year. Since we are under the Department of Education's contract, it's a fixed price model. It's a per student model. So anytime our student enrollment grows, therefore the maximum liability grows. We anticipate the maximum cost of PowerSchool for FY27 to be about $65,000 for the commission. And lastly, I just wanted to review upcoming meeting dates and then scheduling a future meeting date. So a reminder that we have 2 quarterly meetings left. We have July 22nd and 23rd, which will be in Knoxville, and then October 8th and 9th, which will be here in Nashville. This committee is also responsible for recommending quarterly commission dates for meetings. So between now and our July meeting, we'll be polling for our 2027 meeting dates, and the committee should look out for those in advance of the July meeting for approval. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions and then would just ask for a positive recommendation on the procurement items.
And the Tennessee Language Center. Do I have a motion to send the interagency agreement to the full commission for approval? I second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. Aye. The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. Are there any questions or comments before we vote on the PowerSchool agreement? Do I have a motion to send the
Question.
Do we have a list of the other providers that were evaluated? Maybe just some quick commentary on, observations, any that were considered seriously, any kind of close contenders. It's good, I think, just keep track of the emerging technology and capabilities, especially the capacity for some of these platforms to integrate with other systems seamlessly. That sometimes is a problem where you get locked into a particular platform, it doesn't integrate well with other things. So just curious, what other providers stood out, and did we look at this question of just sort of open integration at all?
Yeah, so we are talking to, there are, I believe, 7 companies that have contracts with the state. There's EduPoint, Focus, Follett, Infinite Campus, PCS, PowerSchool, and Skyward. They all have their pros and cons. I think the baseline is that they do have to interface with the state reporting structures, things like that. But we're still in kind of introductory stages. We had to get school year 26-27 squared away, and then we are in talks for the next school year, so 27-28. But we can update you at the next meeting after we have some more rounds of talks with them.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Do I have a motion to send the PowerSchool agreement to the full commission for approval?
So moved.
I second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Aye. The ayes have it. The motion is approved. Thank you, Tess, for always keeping us updated. The final item on our agenda today is an update on the fiscal year 2026 budget from Director of Finance and Operations, Lawrence Walker. Lawrence, you are recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner Carter. So I will be walking you through some key updates for fiscal year 25 true-ups and clawback, an update on FY26 budget to actuals, an overview of the Commission's consolidated funding application grants, and then a very brief note about FY27. The materials have been provided prior to the meeting, but I will provide a pretty in-depth overview for the committee. Starting with FY25 fiscal updates. All geographic districts now have an approved FY25 final expenditure report. We saw movement in both directions. So for Memphis, Shelby County, and Rutherford County, we saw increased per pupil funding. from $12,249 to $12,445 per student in Shelby County, and from $10,273 to $10,503 in Rutherford County. In Metro Nashville, therefore resulted in a funding decrease. So it went from $15,425 to $15,307 per student, causing our MNPS schools to pay a collective clawback of about $430,000. In either direction, all payments have either been processed or requested from schools. For our FY26 budget to actuals, the FY26 budget to actuals has been updated to reflect our spending and drawdown from July 1st to April 1st. And as you review the budget, I'll go through a few items for you to note. Our most recent TISA payment adjustment, I think, provides just another example of how our authorizer fee revenue is volatile. The adjustment from October to December caused a decrease in the projected revenue, but the adjustment from December to February resulted in an increase of about $40,000, and the adjustment was due to the positive fluctuations in schools' ADM. As of today, we do still project our authorizer fee to cover 100% of our expenses. However, as always, we'll continue to monitor and provide updates during the next committee meeting. Lastly, for FY26, you'll notice an overage in one of the budgeted line items of supplies and materials. This is from our office build out that we did in October. And finance and administration required us to classify that expense in that category. However, all things considered, our total non-personnel costs still show around a $53,000 surplus. So it's just kind of the way we had to classify that line item. Next, our consolidated funding application. Spring always kicks off the federal grants and budgeting process for all districts. Our timeline begins this month as we await initial allocations from TDOE. The following timeline that you'll see in the memo is contingent on when we're made aware of those amounts. If we get allocations this month, though, you can go by that timeline. So next, staff will calculate the school level allocations based off of our approved allocation methodology procedures, and then we'll allow schools to submit their applications and their initial budgets. Once the district CFA is approved, schools can begin spending funds as of July 1st. Then later in the year, in October, we will get final allocations from TDOE. We'll true up to our actual ADM in October, and then schools can revise those budgets and draw down funds after TDOE approves that version of the CFA. And then at the end of the year, all districts will submit their final expenditure reports. And our last note for fiscal year 2027, we will provide an updated budget for FY27 at the July meeting for your review and approval. And you can expect to see our updated enrollment projections, and we will have the final budget numbers that are going to be passed by the General Assembly. So with that, I will take any questions or provide any further detail.
Are there any additional questions from the commissioners for Lawrence? Lawrence, thank you. Thanks for keeping us updated on the commission's finances. Thank you all for attendance and participation in this meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. Are there any further comments from the commissioners before we adjourn? The next meeting of the Business Operations Committee is scheduled for July 23rd, 2026. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? I second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
Welcome, everyone, to the April 16th, 2026 meeting of the School Performance and Accountability Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. Hayden, can you take a roll call of the commissioners?
Commissioner Griscom,
Here.
Commissioner Richards,
Here.
Here.
there you have 3 members present. You have
Okay, thank you. The School Performance and Accountability Committee will hear several presentations from staff today. First, Director of Authorizing Beth Figueroa will present the financial update to the 24-25 school year annual report. Then Deputy Director of Authorizing Maggie Lund will present Nashville College Prep's interim review. And then following that, Maggie and School Programs Coordinator Claire Seguin will present the commission school intervention update. And finally, Maggie, authorizing coordinator Sophie Benefield Gilmore, and data and operations manager Natasha Teal will present updates on the 25-26 school year. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on the agenda before we vote to approve?
Move its approval. Second.
We have the motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the agenda is approved. The minutes from the committee meeting held on January 22nd, 2026 have been provided. Does anyone have any edits or comments before we proceed?
Move its approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Our first item is the financial update to the school year 24-25 annual report from Director of Authorizing Beth Figueroa. Beth, you're recognized.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Patterson, and good afternoon. Commissioners, my name is Beth Figueroa, and I am the Director of Authorizing here at the Charter Commission. And as mentioned, I'm here to provide an update for the 2024-2025 school year, now that we have fully finished our annual report. And so as just a kind of ground us in our conversation today, financial performance is a key indicator of success for our charter schools. It sits right there alongside of our school's academic and operational performance. And in a lot of ways, it drives schools' ability to provide the essential services to its students. And so because audits are not finalized until December 31st, and then this particular year, we did have some delays as a result of the government shutdown, the annual report and this specific portion couldn't be finalized until we had received all audits. And so happy to share now that we have all audits. Feels like we're talking about financial performance as of 18 months ago, but it is important that we share out how our schools are financially performing, and that annual report gets updated and on the website. And then just before I dive into the specific financial performance of our schools, I just want to point out and emphasize that we will see instances where maybe a school does not meet standard in a particular area. And so it's important to keep in mind that even if we do see a single measure not meeting standard, it does not necessarily mean that a school is experiencing financial distress. It's more of a signal and invitation for us as the authorizer to lean in with the school and understand more how they are financially performing. Okay, sorry. Thank you. There's a delay on this clicker, just so you know. So first, the financial metrics within the commission's performance framework, they're consistent with indicators that are used by authorizers throughout the country. So the commission does not make up their own financial metrics. The metrics that we use are normed throughout authorizers throughout the country, and they are calculated using the school's audited financial statements, which are prepared in accordance with the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, or GASB standards. The audited financial statements are reviewed on a consolidated basis for networks. So maybe there's a single school that's part of a larger network. So when we are measuring that financial performance, we're looking at the financial health of the network as a whole. And then also we do consider each individual school's financial performance, because it is important that we are not just considering that network's financial performance, but the performance of each individual school. We evaluate schools based on two primary buckets. And so that first is a school's near-term financial health. And these metrics are focused really on their liquidity, their cash availability. What does their enrollment look like? Is it stable? And then there's long-term financial health that we must consider. And this reflects the school's ability to remain viable over time. And so what do the debt obligations look like? Is there sufficient reserve balance to cover the needs of the school? Okay, so, oh, goodness. Okay, you're gonna click for me? Thank you. Okay, so in each of your binders, I just want to point out that you have a copy of the financial specific pages of the annual report. And so as I walk through this, that might be helpful for you to have. And so first, I want to point out how our schools overall performed when it came to their financial performance. And so as you can see, the vast majority of our schools, so 15 out of 17 schools for the 24-25 fiscal year, earned a rating of meets standard. So that included strong financial performance by schools like Bluff, our KIPP schools, Capstone Education Group. So all of those met standard. And then we did have two schools that are falling far below. That's Nashville Collegiate Prep and Rutherford Collegiate Prep. And I'm going to dive deeper into those specific schools as well as some other context as we go to the next slides. So first, looking at near-term financial trends. And so that's going to be on pages 23 and 28. So page 23 has our schools for the West Grand Division. Page 28 has the Middle Grand Division. And so when we consider our portfolio's near-term financial trends, overall, we saw that our schools were performing very well, and our schools were consistently meeting the majority of these indicators. Some things to note that were really encouraging is that we did see our newer schools consistently strengthening their cash position. That's oftentimes as a new school, some of the biggest hurdles. They're trying to get their enrollment up. And so cash is really king for these new schools. And we saw that our new schools are consistently striving and thriving in those first years. All but one school met days cash on hand. And even though that school did not meet standards, year over year, they are financially improving. And so that was a good thing to see. And the next is our enrollment variance. This indicator is how schools are budgeting based on what they actually are seeing as far as enrollment is concerned. And so this is our most frequently indicator that was missed by our schools. And so we're working closely with the schools that are not meeting this specific indicator to ensure that they meet it moving forward and that they're budgeting based on realistic enrollment projections. Next are the sustainability trends. And so as the reminder, this is when these specific indicators focus on a school's long-term financial health. So their ability to cover their debt, their ability to have reserves that should a large expense come their way, that they're able to cover it. And so what we see here is that in comparison to our near-term measures, we did see a lot more variability when it came to our school's performance with these financial sustainability trends. So on this table, it provides a quick summary of the financial trends that we were looking at and how many schools met standards, how many schools did not meet standard, and how many schools fell far below. And as you can see, we have a lot more variety in these specific areas. So for total margin, we had 12 schools meeting standard, 3 that do not meet, 2 falls far below. Total margin, this specific indicator is looking at, is a school bringing in enough revenue to cover its expense? Essentially, are they operating in the black? And these results were mixed across our portfolio. Next is debt to asset ratio and the debt service coverage ratio. Here, the majority of our schools are meeting standard, but there are a few exceptions of schools that fall far below or do not meet this standard. Debt-related financial indicators continue to be a focus for some of our schools. A lot of our schools are investing heavily in capital projects and facilities. It's one of the largest expenses behind your staffing for a school. And so it's not necessarily surprising that this has kind of emerged as a trend, but it is something that we are monitoring. And the next is unrestricted net position. All but 3 schools meet this standard. This measure reflects the school's reserve strength and that flexibility to sustain operations or to cover operations if, say, something large comes up, a roof starts leaking, a lawsuit, those types of things. And then lastly here, total margin by,
Beth,
yes.
Just one,
Mhm.
I think we have a quick question.
So can you talk about the difference between does not meet standard and then falls far below? What is the change that moves? Because they both clearly are not performing where you want them, but what makes you move to the far right column?
Yes, absolutely. So within the financial industry, it's a calculation. Usually it's if you calculate it and the ratio is between a 0.9 and a 1.0, it would be a falls or a meets. And then if it is, so there's certain kind of boundaries that we would expect to see. And and they're pretty standardized across, so the metrics we use, for example, are the same ratios that say if the school looks to go get a bond, they're also looking for those same ratios to be met. And I could provide you with those numbers, but they vary depending on the calculation.
But the difference between the middle column and the far right, because it says falls far below.
Mhm.
That's why, what makes you in that last column versus being in the one you does not meet the standard? Because to me, they both aren't meeting the standard, but there's something that moves them further right. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, so I'll just give an example. So if, say, a school needed to purchase a facility and you have an asset and that asset's worth $1 million and you finance it with $1 million, that's kind of equal. Maybe depending on the ratio, you might say that that's fine. They're still in the black. But a falls far below is, say they had a facility and it was worth $1 million, but they financed $1.5 million. That's a far more extreme instance where they are sustainable or susceptible to a lot more financial risk. And so it's really a picture of, are we looking at a instance where there's some financial risk versus, wow, we really have some significant financial risk. And if it's significant financial risk, then they would be in that falls far below category. And we would then, it's our invitation to lean into the school and to help understand what that will look like in the long term. Yep. And then
So just not to belabor this, but there's no fixed percentage threshold or something that you have to hit for each of these to get into that far right category.
There are fixed.
Oh, they are fixed. Okay.
Mhm,
Okay.
yes,
Thank you. All right. I
just-
must have missed that. Okay. Thank you.
Vary by.
They
Vary by
vary
each one.
by-
Okay. Thank you.
calculation and by individual metrics. Thank you. And then just lastly, the total margin by school. This indicator is only measured for schools that are part of a larger network. And so maybe an organization as a whole is very financially strong, but there is one school in particular that is not meeting that margin. Their expenses are higher than the revenue. So that's what we are measuring when we are looking at total margin by school. And again, just that it's that invitation to help understand what's that plan for long-term sustainability of that particular school, so it doesn't then go and impact the greater health of the entire organization. So now I'm going to shift our attention to our schools that we're currently focusing on. And so as we covered in that last slide, you probably saw that there were certain consistent numbers of schools say falls far below. So first I wanted to mention Nashville Collegiate Prep and Rutherford Collegiate Prep. These are two of our schools that are currently reflecting a falls far below for financial performance. And so as an update and as a reminder, both schools are currently in the process of expanding. They have two new facilities. They're getting their enrollment up. So at this point, they are working to fill the building with students. And so we have been working closely with the schools to understand the long-term financial sustainability. And so they are in the process. They have a plan in place. It will take some time to start seeing them move from that falls far below into the does not meet and then into the meets. But the audits are clean. There are no audit findings. And so there's not an immediate concern for either one of those schools. It's more of a long-term plan that is going to take some time that we start seeing them trend towards meets. Next, we have Tennessee Nature Academy. This is another school that we are collaborating very, very closely on. In particular, they are in the process of building a new facility and expanding. And so we know that this has, the more schools invest in facilities, the more financial risk they take on. So we are working closely with them. And then Lee Neely's Bend, they currently meet standard, but they are more of a teetering school. They are teetering more towards a does not meet. And so similarly, they are expanding. They're looking at different capital projects, and so we are working closely. And then next, just kind of as we wrap up the presentation, wanted to mention some additional context and the reason why we really work closely with our schools to understand their full financial picture. There are instances, and I was focused on like Lester Prep and Bluff City. These are schools that we might see that in any given year, they are spending a lot of money. They're spending down their reserves, and that's not necessarily a reason for concern because they are focusing their resources specifically into strategic investments to support their students. And so that is why we always consider the full context.
I'm just curious, the Nashville and Rutherford, the two falls far below. I'm just curious, are they, do they have enough reserves? Do they have lines of credit? Are they doing a lot of fundraising? How are they paying their bills?
Yep. So as far as their near-term indicators, they have sufficient cash. During the 24-25 school year, they were deficit spending for both schools. Rutherford Collegiate Prep more than Nashville Collegiate Prep, but they have a very strong cash reserve to meet their immediate needs. So they can meet their payroll, they can meet the expenses. The real reason that we see the falls far below is for the debt and the fact that the debt exceeds the asset, that example that I was giving Commissioner Griscom. And so it's going to take time for them to start spending down buying down that debt, that we start seeing the improvement on those indicators.
Again, just out of curiosity, do we have any schools that are leading the way in fundraising, philanthropic, or is it?
Yes, I would say Libertas School in Memphis is
Okay.
very strong with their fundraising. I'm not sure if there are other schools that come to mind,
Okay.
Tess.
I would say KIP
Oh, KIP.
Nashville as a network is
Yes.
also.
When you're looking at the financials, are you looking at cash flow or are you looking at operating performance, including things like depreciation and things like that?
Yes, so we have a number of different metrics. So for cash flow, we're looking at days cash on hand, but we know it's just one snapshot, June 30th. And so there's some days they may have way more cash on hand and other days where it gets low. But for the purpose of our framework, we are looking at just a single day. We also, depreciation and those other factors, they do factor into other calculations that we are looking at.
And I will just add, we also receive semi-annual financials from our schools. Although unaudited, it allows us to have just a quick snapshot in time to give schools some feedback early on to say, hey, you may be trending in one way or the other. Again, an invitation for a conversation. Again, we know those numbers may change and will change, but we want to be in really close conversation with our schools on the finances.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add on to that, like I mentioned, Tennessee Nature Academy, they're in the process of expanding their facilities. And every time we meet with them, we say, can we see your pro forma? Can we see what that looks like? Because it is helpful for us to ensure that we're all in alignment and that they're not stepping into large financial decisions that now put them off track financially.
Chair Richards, and then.
Nashville Collegiate Prep and Rutherford Collegiate Prep are related schools. Is this a single debt burden that's impacting both of them, or does each school have its own debt burden?
Each school has its separate debt burden. So whether you were to look, so one of the things I did look at as NCP went through their interim review, which we're going to talk about next, is out of curiosity, I looked at both schools, both as a network for our performance framework, we're looking at them together. But I was curious, if I were to separate the two schools, and I would say Nashville Collegiate Prep is financially stronger, still not meeting standard. They're still in falls far below because of the debt. However, NCP is financially stronger than Rutherford Collegiate Prep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So when you look at Lester Prep and Bluff City High School, from the note you've got here, it would seem that they probably are on your target list to really sort of, I read what you've got here, but just knowing some of the issues that the schools have had, is that one where, like, you look at an NCP and RCP, and what's happening there, I'm assuming maybe not the same level, but they're also going to have the attention of our staff in making sure, because this just feels like another issue in addition to other challenges they've got, to help them sort of have a much broader perspective as they're trying to get their schools. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and to like Tessa's point, when we receive their semi-annual financial statements, if we see deficit spending, we are always curious as to why. And I would say in the instance of these two schools, these are schools that, as we will kind of get into later presentations, are receiving certain levels of intervention. And so in that case, it's actually sometimes a positive thing that they are in choosing to invest heavily in those specific schools because they're infusing their resources but we want to make sure we're understanding that and that anything that they are doing is sustainable in the long term, because then it would become a financial burden.
So my question relates to looking back over a few years. If we were to look at schools that did not meet standard or fell far below, I frankly wasn't on the commission then. So just curious, have we had schools go through that stage, and what steps of remediation have they taken? What lessons learned, if any, can we draw from those that might have recovered from a does not meet standard or falls far below and are now at meeting standard?
Yes. So historically, our portfolio of schools has been very strong financially. And so I would say, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to present this presentation today, is in the past, we've always seen green. We've always seen our schools meet. But as our schools get more into more complex debt structures, we're starting to see that financial performance is going to become something that we're talking about for our schools because it's just becoming more complex. And so to answer your question, historically, we haven't seen schools not meeting standard. This is kind of a newer and emerging trend that we know we need to put a focused emphasis on to understand.
Okay, I think one of the things that comes to mind, and maybe we could table it for another meeting, but what are the warnings that we ought to consider offering to schools before they enter into certain kinds of debt structures? Or are there certain complex financing structures that they ought to be cautioned against? Having spent time, in the financial world, sometimes people do sort of trap you into structures that are not in your best interest. So that might be an interesting area for you guys to give us some guidance on,
Mm-hmm.
what are you seeing that if not abusive, at least is a potential entanglement or hazard for schools to avoid? Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, thank you. And just to really quickly share that at this moment in time, there isn't a whole lot. We hope that we have the relationship with schools that we can engage in their conversations. Sometimes lenders call us, and so we have the conversation with them ahead of time, but we don't have the ability to say, no, you can't go forward with the financing, for example.
Yeah, I don't mean to belabor, more advisory as opposed to like, no, yes, no, more like, hey, you might want to think about these 2 or 3 things.
Yes, absolutely.
I think we all know that cash flow is critical. I don't care if it's for-profit, not-for-profit. And so is there a standard that we have in terms of, again, cash on hand standard, 120 days,
Mhm.
200 days? What is that standard?
Yes, so we expect it's really not that high. 60 days cash on hand is the expectation for our schools. And that's after 2 years. For our new schools, they have, the requirement is only 30 days cash on hand. And that's pretty typical standards for charter schools across authorizers, but it's not. And we do have schools that are 200 plus days cash on hand, but 60 days is our current threshold for meeting standard.
So when you look at our schools, and in the great majority, what would you say that cash on hand is, let's say, for example, 80 days? What would be that percentage? 27 schools.
We only have one that does not meet, so 92% of our schools are meeting standard. Yep.
Thanks. I should know this, but is there a point that we have to intervene or take action, or if it gets so bad, what, we just let it happen? What does that look like?
Yes, so we have our intervention policy, and so an example I could use is the days cash on hand. We did have a school that at one point got down to, I think it was 3 days cash on hand. And so as they went through, I believe it was part of their renewal that it came to light. And so we did have a notice of concern with them, and we met with them monthly to monitor it. And then should things not improve, then we'd have to move up in intervention as far as plan of correction. But we haven't really had to go down that path yet, but intervention would be the mechanism that we would use. Yeah.
Do we receive quarterly financial reports from our schools?
No, we do
Annual.
not. I'm sorry.
No, quarterly, annual, monthly?
We receive a semi-annual and annual, and then their adopted budgets.
Semi-annual.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to wrap us up really quickly. And I think that actually this conversation touches on why this matters. As we mentioned, our schools are, we're starting to see that our portfolio is growing and expanding. And with that does come more complex debt instruments. It brings on facilities and higher risk. And so we just want to ensure that we are having these candid conversations about how our schools are performing, so that way we can ensure that our schools are working towards being financially sustainable going forward. And then to the point of intervention, that we want to make sure that we are assessing our schools' risk and stepping in, providing those additional supports if our schools are needing that based on our intervention policy. And so happy to take any final questions anybody has.
A very basic question. Could you just unpack what you mean by a complex debt instrument? Like, what's an
Yes.
example of that? Just so that I have a kind of and if you've already explained it somewhere and it's in the writing, I could go back and review it, but I just want to make sure I understand what we're talking about.
Yep, so it could be a bond. So in the past, our schools have been very financially healthy. So for example, our CEG network, they just bought their facilities with cash. They had money, but now we have schools taking on debt, and we don't always have the sight lines into what all that entails. Also, with some of the debt comes certain things that a school has to do in order to remain compliant. So we had a school that fell out of compliance with the terms of their debt, which then put them into default. And so understanding how all of the pieces of our framework work together to meet ensure that our schools are complying with their debt. So it could be just the complexities of the payment schedule, the complexities of if there's balloon payments, all those different things that exist
Right.
within those.
Sort of complex covenants.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, thank you, Beth. Two things come to mind for me. One, absolutely appreciate the thoroughness and detail of the staff with respect to this aspect of authorization. I can say from my experience in Chicago and even my time in Memphis and Shelby County, I think to the extent that authorizers don't think about this the way we do is when we get surprises. And so I appreciate all of your questions, but also the detail that the staff is giving this. And certainly we have a series of interventions in place, but our expectation is that we will not get to those interventions because of the diligence of the staff. So thank you again, Beth, for your work. The next item on our agenda is Nashville Collegiate Prep's interim review, and that'll be presented by Deputy Director of Authorizing, Maggie Lund. Maggie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Patterson. I am Maggie Lund. I'm the Deputy Director of Authorizing at the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission, and I'm here today to present Nashville Collegiate Prep's interim review. So state law outlines that an authorizer shall conduct an interim review of a public charter school in its 5th year of this school's initial period of operation and in the 5th year following any renewal of charter agreements for charter schools. This interim review is also outlined in quality authorizing standards, stating that the review should analyze progress of the school achieving its goals and pupil performance as outlined within the charter agreement. The State Board of Education also offers authorizers guidance on how to conduct interim reviews and how to review the progress of the school in achieving its goals. It also, we have a renewal criteria that we adopted in previous commission meetings. It's under Commission Policy 3.600, which is our renewal policy of commission authorized charter agreements. And that renewal criteria helps us to determine whether a school is on or off track for renewal. And so part of the interim review process looks at that criteria as, where we are in the charter agreement at year 5. And also as outlined in the guidance for authorizers provided by the State Board of Education, any areas that are deemed off track as part of the interim review are recommended areas to engage in some form of intervention. And so we will be discussing that as well today. There we go. The interim process is outlined here on the slide. The commission staff provided the interim guidance document and the protocol to Nashville Collegiate Prep in October. In addition, we provided the renewal criteria document, which was in draft form, which gave them the performance filled out up until that point so they could see kind of where they fell within alignment of the renewal criteria. On December 1st, Nashville Collegiate Prep submitted their interim report to the commission. In January, the commission reviewed the report along with all historical information about the school, which includes past annual reports, site visit reports, performance review letters, anything that we have documented for that school, we reviewed as part of this process. On February 12th, the commission conducted a full-day site visit to Nashville Collegiate Prep, and the site visit included classroom observations and interviews with stakeholders. And it also had an extended data discussion where we not only talked about the data that was currently available for the school, but we looked back historically over the last 4 years and discussed that data as well. On February 20th, the commission had an additional meeting with NEI leadership, which is the CMO for Nashville Collegiate Prep. And we discussed operational and financial performance, along with some other items that we couldn't get to as a part of our discussion at the site visit. And then in March, we compiled an interim report that determined whether or not the school was on track for renewal. And this was shared with the school at that time, and we offered the opportunity for them to meet with us and ask any questions they may have about the report. And what is in front of you today is the interim review report as part of your materials that you have in your binders. So as discussed previously, the commission completed the renewal criteria for Nashville Collegiate Prep as part of the interim process, and it's displayed here for your review. You can see that the school is off track for renewal academically, but we would consider the school to be on track for renewal as it stands now in year 4, or with year 4's data for operations and finance in alignment with our school performance framework. However, I do want to note, you can see the falls far below financially for year 4, as Beth already discussed with you all what that trend will look like. But as it stands currently, our concerns are largely academic in nature, which we'll get into in the next slide. So the interim review analyzes more detailed metrics that you'll see here on the slide. So these are the main categories of things that we look at as part of the interim review, and these are aligned to things that we track within our school performance framework. So these are all things that we have data on and that are available to us. As you can see here, the school, as I mentioned, is off track academically. The areas in which they are off track are cumulative academic performance. As of year 5, the school has met standard in the academic framework for 1 academic year, which is in school year 23-24. And the school has had kind of inconsistent academic performance since its opening, with inconsistent TVOS scores and letter grades of D and C. They have made significant gains recently with their ELA performance, but math still continues to be a concern. The next off-track item is academic program delivery and service of special populations. They did receive a targeted support and improvement designation from the Tennessee Department of Education for underperformance of certain subgroups in relation to overall performance within their school. So that is one area of concern for service of special populations. And then they have some ongoing SPED and EL concerns along with EL student to teacher ratios. They are on track for future academic projections. The interim review that they submitted to us as part of this process was comprehensive in terms of the plan that they had in which to turn around performance. And they had really rigorous but realistic goals set out within. So I would say that would be on track. Chronic absenteeism is off track, mainly because their chronic absenteeism rate has increased as of late. In the 24-25 school year, they were at roughly 27% for chronic absenteeism. So that since that increase happened recently, that would indicate an off-track status. And then the last piece is school culture. They're on track. They have a strong school culture. They're a fairly new school, and they're building kind of those traditions and legacy type items as they do, and they continue to expand to be fully K-12. So the school culture that we saw as part of the site visit was strong and is on track. In terms of operational stability, the areas that are on track are governance and leadership. They have a strong governing board. Facilities are brand new, and they cater really well to their unique community model, which allows them to have really large classrooms with different kind of movable walls and sections to be able to pull small groups and do differing instructions. Their facilities cater to it really well. Also, they talked at length with us in our site visit and meeting around some of the organizational and structural changes that they're making to address some of the academic performance here as well. The 2 areas that are off track here are around student retention and enrollment and teacher retention. They do have a high student attrition rate. Their attrition rate for school year 24-25 was about 66%. And I'm sorry, that is the percentage of students remaining enrolled. So that would be their retention rate, not attrition rate. And the retention rate for the middle grade division, the charter schools that we have within the Nashville area, is around 75%. So it is below kind of the median. And that is something that we dove in on with leadership at the site visit and had some good conversations around. The other piece is teacher retention. So teacher retention as of the 24-25 school year is quite low at 48%. So that means about half their staff turned over. And so that is an area in which we'll continue to engage with them on as a concern. And that is why it is noted as off track. I won't spend a lot of time on the financial piece here because Beth has already discussed it. But you can see that for kind of their financial efficiency or near-term indicators, they are on track, but their outlook and projections of long-term are off track, as Beth has already discussed.
Maggie, the question.
So when you look at chronic absenteeism, is that a predictor for the student retention?
So it's I would say it could be related, but it is different. with student attrition, they count that from an October 1 to October 1 indicator to allow for some fluctuations in the beginning of the school year as people get in and get settled and things like that. So the student attrition rate is just students who leave throughout the year. And with chronic absenteeism, I do think in some instances we do see that schools with higher chronic absenteeism also tend to have higher attrition rates, but I wouldn't say that they're directly related necessarily. It can vary.
Because I was asking if there are any indicators in absenteeism that does lead to the second one that you all look at or that you see, if it's specific populations, anything like that. But you've answered it for me. I didn't know if that was an indicator, knowing that this one's high and you expect this one's probably going poorly.
I think that it could be, and I think that's something that we would definitely be able to dive in on further through some form of intervention with that, as we can like kind of dive into that data and see student by student if that has a correlation there. That's absolutely something we could look at. But I think on the whole, it kind of depends if that would be an indicator necessarily.
All right, this is an interim review, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness because I think it's very critically important that our schools not be surprised when they get to their ultimate renewal year. And can you help me remember, what are the criteria for academic performance for final renewal? Do they have to have met standard the majority of the years that they are, of their 10 years of their term, or was it something else? I probably got it about half right.
You actually, yes, you are half right. Half of it is that they have to meet, the half of the criteria is they have to meet standard for the majority of the years in their term. The other half of the criteria is at the renewal point, we look at the 3 years leading up for renewal to see that they also have a positive trend there. So it's both.
Okay, so the problem that they have, and they know this, is they are digging a hole that is going to be difficult to get out of if this trend isn't reversed pretty quickly. Now, as I understand it, if you look at the performance of their students that they have been able to retain for 3 years, that performance is much better. Is that true?
Yes. So as part of the interim review, and you'll see this outlined in the report, it's in the section around cumulative progress towards academic goals. We did a time and model analysis, which looks at students who have remained in the model for multiple years to determine their closing and achievement gaps and their movement in terms of tiers. And we did see positive trends with that. So students who are staying in the model are moving towards proficiency on the whole. I would just, and we named that with the school, we had that conversation. I would just name the concerns remain around attrition, right? The end size for some of those numbers are smaller than what we would think they would be due to some of the student attrition that they've had of students leaving. So I think the case stands that students who stay do move towards proficiency.
Okay, so solving their academic issues is going to be tied to solving this organizational stability goal of retaining their students.
Correct. And it was something that was evidenced by the site visit as well. Some of the and this is outlined within your report, some of the inconsistencies that we saw from classroom to classroom were named by school staff and administration being struggles with new teachers getting used to their unique model because they had high teacher turnover. Or, it is a unique model. The community model is different from any other schools in the area. And so students who are coming in are also adapting to that. So when you have high student and teacher turnover, it does result in some inconsistencies in the model. And so I think that is right on the mark that we saw too, of in order to get some of the academics right, the stability of the operational things also happened.
Has their attrition rate improved the last year or two, or is it kind of staying the same?
I don't have the data for this specific year yet, but in terms of attrition over the last few years, the students remaining enrolled at NCP have continued to decrease. So it fell from 71% in the 22-23 school year to 66% in 24-25. So the attrition has increased for students, but I don't have the numbers yet for this school year.
Okay, so as far as the intervention goes, we've specifically come to understand what steps they're taking to reduce that attrition rate and to address the need to retain teachers. Is that correct?
Correct. And the slides that I have upcoming around some intervention, those would be included.
Okay, that's what I thought. I mean, obviously, we want them to succeed, but they've got to, the financial stability is something that's more within their control, and there may be ways they could meet standard on that more easily. This academic performance is a really huge problem from what I can see, and I don't want anybody being surprised because that's going to take more time for them to fix. And they've got to be focused on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I had a couple questions, particularly about this teacher retention. That's a very worrying number. Do you know if they collect data about why their teachers are leaving? And is that something that we've asked from them? And my second question was, I see that governance and leadership is on track. So I'm curious, are we not seeing turnover at the principal level or leadership level? It's just at the teacher level. I feel like those are often correlated. So I was just curious about that.
So for the first question, that is a question we asked as part of their site visit. They do collect that data, and that is something that we could utilize as part of a plan of correction is information around exit interviews and things like that with teachers. So that could be something that we could utilize because they did mention that they do track that. In terms of leadership at NCP, there has been stable leadership over time. So we have not seen the turnover at the leader level that we have seen with teachers.
And I do think it's important to note that that teacher retention data takes out any teacher who the school chose to non-renew or exit or
Yeah.
right. So those, it's really the people who were eligible to
So
return.
50% are choosing not to stay.
Correct.
Of
Yes.
those who were not asked. or
Right.
who
We
were
don't want
asked
to
return.
penalize
Yeah,
a school
right,
if
right.
they're non-renewing for
Yeah,
a very
so it's an
valid
even
reason.
bigger number
Yeah,
than
yeah,
it could
yeah.
be. So I would love if we could see, I don't know if it's the community model or what, but it'd be interesting to see what that data looks like from the exit interviews if we're able to get it.
Agreed.
I'm not sure which button to push. So we haven't got to it yet, but back to the financial conversation. I mean, okay, there it is. The efficiency is on track, but the one that worries me is the outlook and projections, because that's a real leading indicator for everything from capitalization to operational cuts and things like that. So what does it mean when you say financial outlook and projections off track? You're not talking about current cash flow. You're talking about, I mean, is it salvageable if they don't have the cash to pull this off?
Yeah, so when we said off track for financial outlook and projections, what we were considering was over the trajectory, they have a falls far below, and they're going to be falls far below for quite some time. And so it's not a 1-year problem. This is a multi-year commitments. And so in 3 years, can they refinance the debt to get it to be more balanced? And so that's what we were considering was for financial outlook and projection was they're falls far below today, and it's likely that they will continue to be falls far below for the next at least 3-4 years.
Commissioner Griskin, and then.
So when you look at faculty, I'd be interested in faculty leaving, how many of them actually have a license? How many of them are working on a license or not licensed at this point and choose to leave? Because it'd be interesting if we're losing licensed teachers, that to me says one thing, but if we're losing teachers who come in, they're working on a licensure and then they decide to leave because they're not going to finish it. But I'd like to, as you're pulling together, I'd love to see what that says too, because I know from a report that we've already seen, there are questions about licensure of teachers, so that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
If this was easy, everybody would do it. It's not. And so, one of the things that because these are schools that I fight for, because they mirror what I fight for at my charter school. Again, you're bringing scholars in who are 2 and 3 grades behind where they should be. And I'm assuming that that's the case with this school. So the 2 or 3 years behind, whether it's math or English or whatever. So it's a unique demographics. Leadership's everything. And when we in fact go into this endeavor, we know what we're signing up for. But how do you measure success? I used to think in terms of full percentage points. Now we're talking about basis, fractions of a point. And I know the man hours that typically have gone in to try to make a difference. And so there's a real, as I said, there's a understanding I have of the job that they have to do, but it is concerning. And at the end of the day, what's your gut? I think that means is something I want to hear in terms of, again, how they're going to look at moving forward. But if leadership has been in place for a period of time and we've got turnover in terms of staff, it's not easy. It's not easy trying to attract, recruit good talent and keep them. But it falls on leadership. The financial piece, let's hope that, again, they've got a game plan for that, okay? I mean, at the end of the day, they're getting $8,000, $10,000 per pupil. So they've got long-term debt. They'll figure that out some way. So, but it's not like, again, they're going to probably have to close the door because they can't meet basic payroll and operations, I would think. But the issue in terms of, again, as I said, going back to that leadership piece, if they've been in place for a number of years, it's really kind of concerning. The issue in terms of, again, degree of absenteeism, because people vote with their feet, even though they're 7th and 8th graders. Parents are walking, and that's also concerning. So you folks are closer to it than we are. We trust the process. We trust your feedback. And the issue is really what's your feelings about, again, what else can we potentially do? A lot of this is on them. I got that. But still, we're here, as I said, to be an advocate for these schools to help them try to make it. People who are very empathetic to their charge and their responsibility. Been there, got T-shirt to show for it. So, this is not cavalier. This is not about, in terms of, again, being, kind of just, I say about challenge that they face, because those students, those scholars are our clients. And their other options ain't that probably great in terms of where they live. So what do you think? How do we really look at trying to turn this thing around, given the fact that we're talking about interim report that's talking about whether or not, in fact, you're going to be renewed for another 5 years? I want to hear from you, Tess.
So I think the next slide talks about what we would like to do is put them on a level of intervention so that we can have much more regular touch points with them than we currently do with all of our schools. Because, the reason that statute requires us to do an interim review in that 5-year period is it allows us to say, here's the feedback. We also have 5 more years to go. Right. So we want to make sure that we're all very closely aligned on what the expectations are. So a level 2 intervention would require the creation of a corrective action plan, which based on the criteria that were outlined in terms of off track, it would allow us to check in bi-monthly on tracking of the status of progress, and then regular report outs to you all so that we can really be seeing, are we seeing movement in some of these initial data indicators. Obviously, we're in testing season right now, so we'll know pretty quickly how this school year is going to do, then to be able to share out to the commission about how things are going. And Maggie, anything else you would?
Yeah. The only thing I would add is within the plan of correction, we will develop that in the areas that we outlined in the previous slide that are off track. So areas that we would lean in on within this plan and receive regular updates on data would be chronic absenteeism, student attrition, teacher retention would be key indicators. Also looking though at cumulative academic performance and trends towards their performance improving on our school performance framework overall. Also, another key piece is the academic program delivery. We know, as we talked about, some of the organizational and operational items led to somewhat of inconsistent program delivery that we saw in observations at site visits. And so that would be something that we would continue to lean in on as well, would be academic program delivery. This school, as part of a level 2 intervention notice of deficiency in our intervention plan, or our intervention policy, is that the school creates the corrective action plan in alignment with the items that we notify as deficiencies. So it's an opportunity for the school for us to say to the school that these are the areas in which we're concerned, and these are the areas that we would be garnering updates at our bi-monthly check-in. So we check in with them every other month, that they would come to the table with updates regarding the metrics that we would like to see in relation to these items. I think one of the great things about this is that it is the school owning the plan. We've run plans like this before with our schools and have found a lot of success in them, given that we're not telling the school how to fix it. We're just telling the school that it is an issue and we want to receive regular updates on how they are addressing it. And then from that piece, as Tess mentioned, we'll provide you all updates in terms of their progress towards the indicators that we've outlined. And then if there is, at the will of the commission, if there are other things that you all are concerned about or things that we need to add or discuss as part of the plan of correction, we have kind of the means in which to do so through this intervention.
Okay. Sorry.
I know that you had conversations about this report and what was going on. Can you give me some sense of how you feel about their reaction and what they've undertaken? Is this a situation where they're already hard at work with ideas and processes and things, or is this something where you feel like you're having to push them to get them to do things?
I did not get the sense in the conversations we had that any of this was a surprise. I think that they're very aware of the deficiencies, and they already have, in many cases, plans in place to address them. And they noted this specifically as, and it's noted within your report, particularly in the organizational structure piece looking forward, that they are making some changes to make sure that the CMO is able to push in on specific items that are noticed as deficiencies here, and they're very aware of where they're at.
Yeah, I want to be real respectful in terms of the issue of how you do your business. The piece of the communication and timely communication is critical in these kind of, again, corrective action measures that we take. Waiting a month, sometimes even waiting 2 weeks is too long. That's one issue. So again, you folks are top notch. I mean, you've done this, you've been there, you got the t-shirt to show for it. I can only share with you in terms of, again, my 50 years of being in business, in terms of trying to turn things around. It's tough. It's tough lifting. It is. When you're trying to look at turning a ship or you're trying to turn individuals. So going back to the leadership piece, my concern is at the end of the day, if it's been in place, who are we talking to? And I think and if we're talking to senior staff, that sometimes is very dangerous, because at the end of the day, that they're not on the ground. It's those teachers that are on the ground. And I think that in these situations, this crisis, hair's on fire, and it's a blitz that you sometimes have to do, so that there's just no mistake or misunderstanding in terms of, again, where the problems lie and what we can do, and the need to really, like every day, this is what we're doing to, in fact, effectuate change. So again, that's me sitting on high, pontificating maybe in some ways, but again, a little background in terms of, again, having had some successes. It's not fun. It's very time consuming. And typically you go there, not they come to you, you go there, because in that way you really do see what's going on. You touch and feel, and you develop a relationship with the folks who at the end of the day are really on the ground teaching and really interfacing with the staff, with other staff, as well as with the scholars. Because again, those senior people, sometimes they're far removed. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Terrence. So, boy, I don't want to just beat the dead horse here, but echoing some comments that have already been placed. When I see and I'm sure y'all share this I'm guessing y'all are all over that. I know you are. When you see this, do not meet, and then you see especially the teacher retention and how it has dipped significantly the last several years. And I see their plans wanting to connect with teacher prep partners and, well, I mean, and y'all know, I mean, we know how delicate and fragile all of this work is. And when it starts going downhill, as you've already commented, boy, it's hard to stop that train. This teacher retention to me is one of the biggest red flags. And I'm thinking about the exit interviews, if there's any way to get a hold of last year's or this year's exit interviews to try to hear from folks in classrooms about what's going on. I'm also relating to an experience I'm going through and have with a charter school currently, not under this commission, another one. But just the word got out, like, don't teach there. And so they could not attract good teachers, and they're losing the good. Anyway, it's just this spiraling down. So this is very, as I'm sure it is to you, very concerning. So if there's any way to get a real read on what's going on and why folks aren't staying immediately, because it'll be tough to turn it around if it's, again, if it goes back to the school leadership. Y'all know this. Thank you.
Do they have a new school leader? Am I just remembering from a couple years ago? Because I seem to recall some conversations about that. With the same
No,
leader?
NCP is the same school leader.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what? So level 2, I'm curious, so we can jump levels, right? We don't have to go in order.
Yep.
Did y'all think about level 3?
So the reason we did not recommend level 3 is that level 3 is probation, and we just placed our 2 priority schools on probation in January. And so we felt like because these schools, this school in particular, it has a federal designation, but it has not met the level of being designated as a priority school, that we felt like a level 2, it's more than a notice of concern, which, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about our schools that we've received notices of concern. But given the fact that we're in interim review, we felt like a level 2 notice of deficiency was appropriate. And then the probationary would be the higher level schools that we're dealing with right now.
I think that's all I have for you. There is no commission, there's no vote to place them on a level 2 notice of deficiency, not like a level 3, which does require a vote. But I do appreciate the insights and what you all would like to see. It helps us work with the school to develop a plan of correction.
Great, thank you. The 2 quick points before we go to the next item. Will we get another update at the July meeting, assuming data is out, or will we have to wait until October? So we will get an update.
We will provide you an update as to where we are in the process, but we will not be able to share any data at that point in time because it will not be public. But
We can share, like,
we will have
we will
anecdotal.
have it, we can share it, we can't publicly talk.
Right, right.
Okay, so we'll, oh, go ahead.
Maggie, Test, to the degree you would want me, more than happy to be a part of maybe some conversations with the school. Okay, so and again, you're gonna hurt my feelings. It ain't like I don't have stuff to do. Trust me. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think that this is a team effort. And so, you know, I want to sit back and not be a part of the solution. Okay, I'm more than willing to help if in fact you think I could bring some value. I'd like to think I can, but I don't know. Nobody likes me except for Clarence.
That's not true. That's not true. Okay, thank you, Maggie. Thank you for the update. We'll stay tuned. And then the second point I was going to add was curious to look at comparative data for where those students would have otherwise gone to school, whether this academic performance is either in line, below, or above, as you're doing your analysis. Don't have to answer that now, but we can follow up offline. Thank you again. Maggie, I think next we will go to our updates on school interventions from Maggie and our schools program coordinator. You're both recognized.
Thank you, Chair Patterson. Since we are talking about intervention, we'll just continue on the intervention train. And Tess even queued up this slide talking about priority schools and probationary status. So just wanted to provide a quick update on 2 schools who are currently on probationary status as placed as of our last meeting. And this is for academic underperformance and being designated as a priority school, Lester Prep and Wooddale Middle School. As a reminder, Lester Prep was designated as a Tier 1 priority school in alignment with the Tennessee Department of Education's framework, which results in an LEA-led intervention process. Wooddale Middle School was designated as a Tier 2 priority school in alignment with the Tennessee Department of Education's framework, which results in working with a contracted turnaround expert for that school. So I am now going to turn it over to Claire, who is going to talk through some more specifics on both of those schools and where we're at in that process.
Thank you, Maggie. Since I spoke with you all in January, I've transitioned to a new role as our school programs coordinator and will be continuing to spearhead this intervention process. As Maggie mentioned, we do have 2 schools who were placed on probationary status and have a designation through the Department of Education. Those are Lester Prep and Wooddale Middle. Since we met last, Lester Prep completed an extensive and detailed comprehensive needs assessment. Through this analysis, this school identified root causes contributing to gaps in academic achievement, particularly in ELA and math. These findings informed their school level decision to focus on real-time monitoring of instruction. They've made some strategic shifts already and are actively monitoring the data to continue to determine progress toward their internal goals. You can see some strategic shifts they've already made, including having reading intervention courses embedded throughout the school day, smaller class sizes, additional leadership team members, and an increase in small group targeted tutoring services. After Maggie and the authorizing team reviewed their submissions so far, the commission has chosen to use this plan as the basis of their plan of correction for their probationary status. It also will serve as their LEA-led intervention through the tiered intervention system framework. Commission staff met with both school and network leadership for Lester Prep at the end of March and walked through immediate steps as they relate to the tiered intervention framework and the ongoing alignment as the requirements through the department and the commission to ensure accountability while still reducing the administrative burden where possible. Lester Prep has submitted a proposed budget for the turnaround funding that they will receive. This has been approved both at the commission level and by the Department of Education. Their next steps for the remainder of the 25-26 school year include reviewing the school assessment data once it does become available and making any adjustments to their plan of correction and their LEA-led intervention once that data becomes available. Wooddale Middle School was identified as a Tier 2 school on the tiered intervention system framework and was unable to move forward with an LEA-led intervention. Instead, we completed our selection of a department-approved turnaround expert with whom Wooddale Middle School will partner. They also completed a needs-based self-assessment that aligned with the department's template and identified areas of strengths and opportunities for growth. Wooddale Middle School and the chosen turnaround expert are currently negotiating their contract, and the key proposals in that contract include building leader capacity, content-specific professional development for academic coaches and leaders within the building, and individualized coaching and consultation to refine systems and barriers related to academic and non-academic areas. So really thinking about their truancy and chronic absenteeism rates as well.
Claire, one quick question. Can you share who that turnaround expert is
Yes.
at the moment?
Yeah, so we completed interview processes and brought in school and network leadership and ultimately selected instruction partners as the chosen turnaround expert.
Yeah, another question.
Who pays for it?
Yeah.
Who pays for this service? We do, or they take it out of their budget?
So the way that the funding was originally allocated from the department to districts
Right.
across the state, most districts are choosing to engage in that contract directly with the
Okay.
turnaround expert.
Sure.
We have consulted with the department and their legal team, and they have allowed the school to contract directly. However, there is significant funding for that. So Wooddale Middle School is receiving approximately $400,000 for fiscal year 27, specifically for school turnaround. And the contract with Instruction Partners is around $65,000. So that will come out of the school funded budget, but they are receiving funds from the state for that.
So bottom line, they're paying 65,000 for a consultant.
Mhm.
That's it?
For this
For
next
this
school year.
particular- Okay, what do they do with the rest of the money?
We have not seen their budget yet. It is something we're actively working on with them, but they do have some autonomy in how they will spend that. The Division of School Turnaround with the department ultimately also approves their budget and has some pretty strict allowability requirements. So it does have to be directly aligned to the school improvement plan and a comprehensive needs assessment. And that alignment must be very clearly spelled out.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. Thanks,
Mhm.
Mr. Chair.
And now how long is the grant? Or how long will they get funds?
So the
Turnaround grant?
Sure. The two grants that they will receive for turnaround funds right now, it's Turnaround Grant 6, so the sixth iteration of that, and the State School Improvement Grant 3, the third iteration of that. Those are both one-year grants. So they will receive that funding for this coming school year. There is no indication at this time that there will be an iteration 7 or 4. However, we are on the 6th and 3rd, so it's possible. The next steps for Wooddale Middle School, we have been in touch with both school and network leadership. We are reviewing their turnaround grant budgets and the corresponding applications to ensure both alignment and allowability, making sure that it is directly connected to their school improvement efforts. They are, like I said, engaging in the contract negotiations with Instruction Partners. When school level data becomes available, they will review the interventions they have already put in place, and they will review that both with us and with the turnaround expert and create a comprehensive plan that will go into effect on July 1 of 2026 in terms of their plan of correction and their needs assessment.
Great, go ahead.
I have one more slide, but
Okay.
I don't know why it won't. There it goes. Okay. Other intervention updates. The other schools that are on an intervention currently are listed here on your slide. So Bluff City High School is still in a level 2 notice of deficiency for academic underperformance. We are continuing bi-monthly plan of correction meetings with them. We meet with them every other month and look at their progress towards the items outlined within their plan of correction. We will do a holistic review of their plan of correction and progress in July and August once testing data is available for us to review. And from that point, we will move forward in considering further intervention or, any sort of movement of tiers. I do want to note that Bluff City High School is currently undergoing a renewal process. So they have submitted their renewal application. So that will be this sort of plan of correction that we have in place for them will be a part of that renewal process that we'll look at. The other two schools that are under intervention are Tennessee Nature Academy and Rocketship Nashville Northeast. We issued notices of concern for them for academic underperformance. The next step with that is we meet with school leadership in July, and we will have preliminary academic data at that point to discuss if they have made progress in turning around some of the academic underperformance as seen from the last school year, or if further intervention is necessary, but we'll provide you all an update as to where they are in July, at the July meeting.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Maggie or Claire? Okay. The final item on our agenda is an update on the 25-26 school year from Maggie, our authorizing coordinator, Sophie Benefield-Gilmore, and our data and operations manager, Natasha Teal. All three of you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair Patterson. I'm going to provide a few updates for you as we've closed out some of our major monitoring processes for this year, being that it's April. So the first one I'd like to provide an update on is site visits. Every year we visit all of our schools in person and see them in action. And we believe that this is a critical part of our oversight and monitoring process. We talk a lot about data, as you all well know, especially coming from myself and my colleague Rebecca. But we also know that there's a lot of value in getting into the school and seeing some of the more qualitative measures. And so our site visits offer us the opportunity to do that. At this time, we've completed site visits for all of our schools for the school year 25-26, and I'm going to share with you some highlights and some areas of focus that we've seen across the board. Just really quickly, I want to talk about what the site visit process entails. We do classroom observations at every site visit. We do stakeholder interviews, and so we meet with parents and teachers, students, and staff. We also meet with school leadership and or the network of the school to review academic data. We also, I think as part of this process, which we find really helpful, is we issue a report to each school, which goes to their executive director and governing board chair, which talks about our findings from the visit. So those are things that went well, or things that we would suggest that the school take a look at based on our findings. So some overview kind of highlights to share. Majority of commission schools have a consistent vision and aligned systems that support student culture and outcomes. We talk a lot about systems when we're at our schools and how they're utilizing the data that they have in front of them. And we find that schools that have strong data systems have strong student outcomes. They are also, part of that goes into how they are providing services for students because they're tracking their progress, what students are receiving intervention and the help that they need. And I would say on the whole, our schools do this really well. New schools and schools with newer systems are showing promise. A lot of times these site visits are really collaborative. And so our newer schools have Sophie, who goes to those site visits, who help run our pre-opening process. So that relationship is there. And a lot of them will ask questions of, how do other schools do this? Or, what works well in other places? And so site visits are a really great opportunity for us to talk about those systems. But on the whole, I did want to share that they were just really positive site visits, and it's really great to get into our schools and see all the great work that's being done. A couple areas of focus that I think are worth, Thank you. A couple areas of focus that I think are worth mentioning is actually the exact inverse of what I just said, is schools with inconsistent academics systems and culture systems often see this reflected in their data. We see that when we're in schools. One of the things that we look for in site visits when we're doing classroom observations is consistency, is what leadership tells us that they want us to see in classrooms happening. And if it's not, how many are not happening, or what is the experience like in one classroom to the next, right? It should be a consistent experience in alignment with their mission and model. So those are some of the things that we look for. And so what we found is schools that are struggling to kind of develop or implement those academic systems or school culture systems, you see that often in their student outcomes data. And then as we've talked about at length at this committee meeting, staffing continues to be a struggle for many schools. A lot of our schools are operating with staffing vacancies. We know that staffing vacancies affect leadership capacity because our school leaders are stepping in to cover classes. We know that it affects provision of services for our students with disabilities and English learners. It affects EL staff to student ratios, and then just consistency of school-wide systems. When you have substitutes in buildings or you have long-term subs, it's hard to have people who are bought into those systems or understand those systems that we've talked about. So staffing continues to be an ongoing concern. I'll now talk briefly about performance review letters, which is another key part of our oversight and monitoring process. The most recent performance review letter was our second one that we do for this year, and our last one. It went out this week to operators. The letter includes progress towards indicators on the organizational performance section of our framework and provides an opportunity for transparency for operators. The idea here is that we alert them of issues that we're seeing and give them the opportunity to fix them by the end of the year so they can come in compliance and have a meet standard for all the indicators on the organizational section of our framework. That's the intent of these. I was doing really great with this and now I'm not.
You're doing great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. Some areas of focus that I think are worth mentioning of just patterns that we've seen kind of bubble to the surface. And Rebecca sent out a summary that you do have in your materials with you today of this information. But one of the areas of focus is indicator 4D, which is credentialing. We have 11 of our 24 schools being off track for credentialing requirements. This is less than the first performance review letter that we had, which was 14. But this is something that would need to be rectified by the end of the year to meet standard on the framework. A couple contextual pieces that I think help with this. Majority of cases in our schools, this is just one teacher. So we believe in 100% compliance. They need to have all licensed teachers. Schools that are off track, majority of them just have one unlicensed teacher. We do have a few schools with more unlicensed teachers, and we will follow up, directly with those schools, but ultimately it's usually one. Also, I think it's important to note that some of our schools, in most of our schools, teachers are enrolled in teacher prep programs, but they haven't completed their certification yet. So it doesn't mean that it is just somebody who has no plan to be licensed necessarily, but it's someone who hasn't yet received their licensure, or has not taken the appropriate tests to receive their licensure.
Can I ask, Maggie, so that teacher would be included like in this 11 of 24?
Correct.
Is that right? Is there any, I sympathize, if the right word is, with this, once hiring teachers, I mean, sometimes your best teachers in the building are the ones who aren't yet licensed or working on it. I would hate to, I know we have to be 100% compliant, but I also want to support our schools who are trying to do the right thing. Like, is the state giving any grace or support? I just want to be sure, because our schools aren't getting penalized if they're trying to take the right steps. Does that make sense?
Yes. I don't know that the state is giving any grace, but I would say from our perspective, it's something that we work with our schools on. They know when these things come down the pipeline. We actually had a school reach out when they received the letter and said, wait a second, we thought we had all of our licensed teachers and we looked at the report and somebody was misplaced and we changed it and updated it. So this is very much a transparency tool for us to say, hey, we're just letting you know this is what we're seeing on our end. Is it the same with what you're seeing on your end? The expectation is that your teachers are licensed. And so, it's what they do with that. I also want to note too, that this is one indicator on the organizational performance section of the framework. And they can still meet standard for that section despite having a teacher not licensed. Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I leaned over to Terrence. So when I saw this report, and I've seen the one Rebecca put, and I sent her a question back, because when I saw 11 out of 24 schools and knowing the importance, and we had an issue in Chattanooga, as you know, about licensed teachers, I have a different perception now. We say, well, it may be just one.
Mhm.
So what I would ask going forward, the 11, no, we got 11 schools, but it'd be great to know is it a significant number?
Sure.
So if it's half their teachers or a third of them or whatever, that's just helpful. Thank you. And the second thing is this, you made some comments about staffing, things like this. And as I listened to what you said, we've had people who've come to this commission wanting to get us to make them a charter school. We've had discussions where I may be coming as a leader of the school, but I'm also going to do this and this and this and this. And we had questions about that. You have pointed out, and you are seeing real-time issues that come up. If somebody's coming in and they decide they can do 3 or 4 jobs, when in effect you really have, this is your responsibility and it's going to take up this much time. So I would love if you're able to do it, to have lessons learned, things like that. So as we're looking and reviewing applications, we can say, yeah, if somebody says, well, I think I can do all these jobs. We say, well, we have looked at that. Our staff has looked at this. And we've seen that really causes some concerns inside of school, whether it's starting or trying to keep it on track. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's just good to know that there is out there good information and data that we could, that we can say, we've seen it and maybe you're different, maybe you can make it work. But thank you and I would love, if you're able to pull, little nuggets like that together.
Absolutely.
I was going to do it.
said a different retention. No, it's the second issue. Okay, I'm just trying to find it.
To answer your first question, I actually, Rebecca clued me in on your question. Of the 11 schools, only 3 have more than one teacher that is unlicensed or not credentialed.
And I would just add, to Commissioner Griscom's point, like we do see our new schools really struggle in staffing. It's a national issue. There are not enough teachers, quality teachers to fill classrooms, right? And so that is, I think, when we talk about opening new schools, when we talk about evaluating applications, what is the offer to get quality teachers to come to your school? Because that is the number one thing that we see across all of our schools is the staffing challenges and hiring.
Mr. Commissioner. Go ahead, Chair. The whole issue of staffing is an issue, particularly in our urban cores throughout the city. It's just a challenge. Maggie, what's your view on this on someone needing to have, in fact, a teaching certificate in order to teach? Is that really, should that be the issue in terms of, how we should lay down the law? Because again, to the degree we've got people that can bring value, they don't have a darn degree, have no interest in wanting to do that, but they really bring value. Where do you side?
I side with whatever the current law is, according to our general counsel.
Tess, I purposely didn't ask you that, okay?
I'll defer to Ashley. Would you? What is my stance on that?
That is really.
I do think it raises a good point in all seriousness. I think, there's a lot of pathways right now for alternative licensure and our schools often utilize them. And I think, to your point, Commissioner Smith, about we don't want to penalize schools who are having teachers utilize those programs. And there is a delay, right? Like, what happens if they're in this program and they fail their praxis and they have to take it again, right? And then at some point you have this ongoing licensure issue. So it is an ongoing concern. And so I hope you all rest easy knowing that we work really closely with our schools on this issue and know deeply, especially with Pam Kimbrough's work with the reporting calendar. She knows down to the person, to the license number, to every single thing as to where they stand with those things. So we work with them closely.
Thank you.
Max. Thanks.
Oh, I have one more thing. Enrollment variance. Excuse me. Sorry about that. One item that did come out of performance review letters that I did want to note, and we noted this last time for you as well, is the enrollment variance indicator, which is 1C. So we had 9 of 24 schools that are off track as of March 12th for their enrollment variance. As a reminder, this enrollment variance indicator is their average daily membership to budgeted enrollment, where they need to fall within 95%. This is an indicator that our schools can meet, and they can just update their budgets to provide us updated numbers in terms of enrollment. And so we have that opportunity in June of 2026. So it's a pretty simple. There are some schools who are off track, but there is an opportunity to rectify it. So I did want to call that out prior to the end of the school year. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sophie Binnenfeld Gilmore. I'm the authorizing coordinator and I run our pre-opening process. So I will now give you a short update on our pre-opening schools. Okay. To orient you, we have 3-ish new schools. Well, we have 3 schools opening in school year 26-27. The first is the Rock Academy, which is opening 9th grade only in Nashville. They are our very first opportunity public charter school. I wanted to note this is the first school of its kind, and there are specific enrollment criteria that need to be met. They need to be at least 75% at risk. We expect enrollment, therefore, to be a little bit slower going. We expect for enrollment to materialize mostly later this year, mostly over the summer. We've been in close contact with the school. We will continue to be in close contact, and they're monitoring very closely. They're doing very specific outreach and marketing. And we are all going to learn a lot during this process. The next is two below that is Jackson Museum School. That's our other new start school for next year. They are going to be the first charter school in Jackson. They will be opening K2 next year, although they will go all the way up through 8th grade in the future. Finally is Knowledge Academy at the Crossings. They are transitioning authorizers from Metro Nashville Public Schools to us. They serve grades 5 through 12. I also added on this list Rocket Ship Tennessee 4, which will be in Rutherford. However, they will not be opening next year. As we all decided last time, they have submitted notice that they are going to exercise their right to delay.
Sorry,
Just to-
quick question. What's a
Yes.
museum school?
A museum school is a very interesting model in which they holistically give instruction based on a certain unit, and then at the end they have a museum focus. I would highly recommend you can look at her application or her website, but there are many throughout the country that people are very excited about. Cool. Overall, pre-opening activities are progressing. Schools have been submitting items in a timely manner, and they have all secured facilities, which was the biggest hurdle so far. So it's very exciting when The Rock and when Jackson Museum School were able to secure their facilities. We've also had strong participation in our best practices meeting, and they've submitted items on time. Therefore, all of our new and transitioning schools are on track to open in the fall.
Maybe just a quick follow-up on the museum school. Is
Yeah.
there a good model of a museum school that's out there outside of Tennessee or in Tennessee that you'd point us to just for additional background?
Not in Tennessee. I couldn't tell
Okay.
you one right now, but I think within their application materials, I know they visited a few around the country. So I would
Okay,
take a look.
so there's some that are succeeding
yeah.
and thriving and,
Absolutely.
okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, I wanted to give a quick enrollment update for our schools that are new this year. So those were our 7 pre-opening schools from last year. To kind of go back on what Maggie was talking about earlier, most of our schools have a reasonable variance from their projected enrollments, with the expectation of a few schools. You'll notice Empower here. We also have a few that are significantly under budget as well: Invictus, Lead Southeast, and Empower. Yeah.
So, yeah, Sophie, can you just share a little bit about
Yeah.
what you're hearing from Empower in terms
Yes.
of why their enrollment is so
Yeah.
dramatically low?
So, of course, we are concerned about Empower's enrollment numbers and therefore their ability to operate next year. Commission staff and Commissioner Richards attended a recent governing board meeting. In the meeting, staff expressed concern to the governing board, and the governing board was discussing potential strategies for increasing enrollment next year. We're taking steps as commission to monitor attendance and operational priorities to make sure they're prepared. And that also looks like monthly check-ins with them and a modified pre-opening checklist that we're running them through to make sure that she's ready for it. I wanted to show you this to point out that this is why going through the application process, we talk so much about community demand and enrollment and budget flexibility, because the first year of enrollment is really hard and that affects your budget as well. So we need to make sure that when we're looking at applications, that's why we're focusing so much on it. Unless you have any other questions about this. That's all I got.
So could you speak to Lead Southeast low
Yeah.
enrollment as well?
So as Beth mentioned earlier, they have a strong network behind them. There's someone that we're watching. We're closely monitoring the organization. So right now, the organization is able to help them, even though their enrollment isn't quite where they wanted it to be. They're taking strategic moves to increase enrollment, but we want to make sure that we're watching them. Thank you.
It's not so much a question, but, at the end of the day, I don't care if we're talking about K through 12 or college. We ain't having as many babies in this country. Why you laughing, Ashley? Do you refute what I'm saying? Okay, because I thought I was going to ask for a legal opinion.
Well, both could be true. It could be funny and true.
I think the concern, it's not a concern, but I think it's two things. One is a marketing message. So I'm changing directions here in terms of maybe getting off our agenda in some ways, our topic. And that is promoting. You know, I don't know if we've ever had an NBJ story that Tess has done, talking about her role, her responsibilities, and what this commission's all about. And I'd like to think that, again, our 27 schools that are under our jurisdiction have had some degree of press. Point is we got to fight. We just don't have as many babies that are being born. And there's a fight to look at trying to, in fact, gain bodies and seats. I don't care where you are. Now, again, you're Harvard, you're good. You're Vanderbilt, you're good, right? That's not the case in terms of, again, the marketplace that we serve. So I'm just bringing this up as something we should think about, because I really would like to make sure that people in the 95 counties in this state know about what we do and the good work that we do. And the work that you do staff-wise, because again, you know, I know my charter authorized in Detroit didn't even come close in terms of, again, what they provide compared to what staff provides. I think you should brag about yourself. I really would like to see $5 coming from our budget to go towards marketing promotion of the Charter School Commission and featuring Tess or others or combined in terms of the value that we're bringing to the marketplace and then promoting our 27 schools. I think it's critical for our growth, for their growth, and they should get behind that. And so I would highly, highly, highly suggest you as a team really think about that in terms of really moving forward. But I also think that there's a conversation we've got to have with our schools and among ourselves. I'm not surprised by the actuals compared to what's forecasted. I think it's going to get worse. These numbers are not going to, in fact, jump. Our first day that we opened, you know, had a lottery. That was 11, 12 years ago with my charter school in Detroit. But heck, we got a brand. I got a guy who's an NBA basketball player. Okay, so when we opened again, that was a big deal. We really had a lottery. It was great. I was excited about that. We haven't had to have a lottery since then. So again, looking at this thing realistically, I think it's important to have those conversations about really potential growth with our clients, with our charter schools, among the staff. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. I'm not on the committee, but actually you're right. You're onto something, because I think when we first got out the door on this, a lot of data gets misinterpreted and put out there in some cases by media that, you know, they're trying to communicate to the public. But sometimes it's out of context. The fact that some schools might not meet some of our metrics doesn't mean those are bad schools, but that's how it gets interpreted. And it's not fair to the people who are trying to make decisions for their children about what's best for their children, you know. And I think you used the term marketing, and I think it's actually a better term might be to just educate the public. We are a public body. The work we're doing is public work. And I do think it's sometimes important to over communicate to the public through our own venue, whether it's, I hate to say it, Twitter or X or whatever, but regular communications publicly about the great work our schools are doing. And frankly, acknowledging if some schools are falling short, that we're concerned about it and we're watching it. So if we don't speak for ourselves, somebody else will. So you make a great point. Well, and again, it's okay to acknowledge if there's a problem. It's okay to say we're doing great in these areas. Here's areas we're focused on. I think that's how you build public trust.
Good afternoon. My name is Natasha Till. I am the Data and Operations Manager and in my first week as the District Testing Coordinator, and I am going to give you some great updates of testing. Listen, no grace is given, but we started our testing on February 2nd with our dynamic learning maps. That's associated with TCAP Alt. That's with our exceptional students and how they are testing. And this is our first week of opening up the testing window. Where all of our schools have been testing. Our grades 2 through 8 are doing an achievement test. And of course, your high school students are doing the end of course test. If you see on the outline there, we have some deadlines coming up. We are wrapping up very quickly with getting the first round of tests going out, with ELA wrapping up. And then we're going to be finishing around May 5th for those students that are taking the ACH, and then May 8th for those students that are taking the end of course. Everything closes on May 15th and things will be shipped back out. On the next slide, the last slide, I'm going to show you some important updates. Or I'm going to tear it up. Yeah, I'm just going to let her go back there. Wow. I just took you all the way to the top. Okay. There we are. So major changes this year for the 25-26 school year is that the spring testing dates were changed slightly. Generally speaking, the first week ELA subpart 1 must be sent back, but due to inclement weather that happened in the wintertime, they did extend that out. So everything must be shipped back by the 24th. Happy to report that the majority of our schools did keep their original dates in order to get their items in as soon as possible to ensure the raw score date, their materials are ready and the score is given. The exception on that 24th date is anybody that needs to make a makeup test or anyone that wasn't there, they get to the duration of the testing time to make that ELA portion up. Another exception this year is the grade 3 retake window. Once testing is completed, there will be about a 48-hour turnaround for schools to identify what students need to take that retake in Pearson. Don't worry, all of our schools have been given a one-pager of how to effectively do this, and so they are aware that this is happening and very rapidly. And of course, we have systems in place to ensure that all our students are accounted for. An update that is coming up in the 26 and 27 school year is that all grades will transition from testing on paper and going into testing on computers. And that means second grade all the way through high school. Judging from your eyes, I also know the frustrations of that. I used to be a second grade teacher and I first thought, oh goodness, but the TDOE has set in some systems to get those students prepared. So please keep in mind that students in second grades are using the platform computers already, using Zearn and other platforms to prepare themselves. There are also practice tests that are available for schools to use in TestNav to get them started. We have been talking to our schools that are currently within our commission and portfolio and the ones that are coming to make sure that they are aware about the one-to-one ratio with computers. And we have systems in place to ensure that they'll be able to do that. Of course, EOCs and ALTs will remain the same. And that's all I have, if you have any questions.
Thank you all for your attendance and participation at this meeting of the School Performance and Accountability Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. Are there any final comments from commissioners before we adjourn? And before we do adjourn, all of your thoughtful comments just remind me how strong this body is. I mean, thank you for your attentiveness and your insights and even your backgrounds and experience. Super helpful. And it's a great compliment to not only our work, but also the hard work of the staff. The next meeting of the School Performance and Accountability Committee meeting is scheduled for July 23rd, 2026. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second? Commissioner?
Second.
Richards? A second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break before we start Rules, Policy, and Governance Committee.
It's important. No.
Committees are always so.
They're lively. I encourage debate and conversation. It's a welcome change from the old.
Yes. I just look at.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Okay, welcome to the April 16th, 2026 meeting of the Rules, Policy, and Governance Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. Hayden, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Levine,
I'm here.
Commissioner Marina. Present. Chair Smith.
Present.
Chair, you have 3 members present, you have 4.
All right, thank you, Hayden. On today's agenda, we have 2 policy changes and 1 rule, all presented by General Counsel Ashley Thomas. First, we will hear changes to LEA Policy 6910 on first reading. Following that, we have Commission Policy 3.400 on final reading. Then we have Commission Rule 1185-01-04 on first reading. Finally, we'll have a discussion on the election of vice chair. Do any commissioners have questions or comments before we vote to approve the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. The minutes of the committee meeting held on January 22nd, 2026 have been provided. Does anyone have any edits to make regarding the prior minutes before we proceed? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the January 22nd, 2026 meeting?
Move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say, aye. Opposed say no. Ayes have it. The minutes are approved. The first item on our agenda today will be discussion and vote on changes to LEA Policy 6910 on first reading. Ashley, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So this first policy we are bringing is our news, media relations, and communications policy. It sort of goes to some of the conversation we just had in our prior committee. As the commission grows, there are oftentimes that there is media related to our schools. And this policy, the goal here is to sort of get in front of any communication that may come through, negative or positive, about our schools. And so I'm hoping that we can get this slide to change, but it should just be 1 slide.
Oh, Pam is back.
Pam is back. So Pam will bring it up, but it is in your folder, the red line of proposed changes. And so while they are pulling that up, we are asking our schools to notify commission staff if there are emergency services that require a response, emergency services to school campuses, if there was like an arrest of a student or a staff member, a large-scale disruption to school operations, as well as any positive media that our schools would encounter. This is on first reading, we have talked to stakeholders about this policy. We got their input. And so this red line reflects the initial conversations we've had with our schools. We're bringing it to this committee for any additional feedback that you all would like to see added to this policy. We will go back another round to talk with our stakeholders, our schools, about items. I think some of the bigger conversations that we have with our schools, in addition to the incidents that would prompt them to notify us, I think the biggest question was timing. As you can see here on this red line, we said as soon as practical, but no later than like 1 business day. Of course, we want whatever emergency occurs to be handled first, but then to notify us as the authorizer in LEA. So we felt like 1 business day was reasonable, but I give it to Chair Smith to facilitate discussion on this policy.
I think the question that arises for me is the presence of a lot of qualifying adjectives and how much scope of discretion we want schools to have. And, is that what we're comfortable with? For example, in the first one, it says significant incident. What's significant and how do they judge it? The next bullet, it says significant again. Bullet 4 says large scale. What's large scale? The next bullet is credible. So that's the area I would probably push most on, is that leaves a fair amount of judgment, I think, with the school to define what those words mean, unless there's some other definition for them in some other document they've received. So just raising that as an issue that we might be surprised by.
Commissioner Lehrman, thank you so much for that comment, because I do think a lot of the feedback we got was what we would consider like a threshold issue, which I think is what you're getting to is, not to say emergency services don't come to a school all the time, but we had schools say, well, do you want us to tell you every time a kid has an asthma attack? Or if, law enforcement comes or there's a lockdown of the building because there's something happening in the neighborhood. But very much understand your point of how do we be super clear about like, here's where we need you to notify us because we need to notify our stakeholders versus, look, we trust our schools, we trust their autonomy. We want them to manage their own operations. So we will take that note and really think about how can we be like very precise, specific in our language. Yeah.
And I think the only thing I would add, I know you brought up, Commissioner Lehrman, the credible threat. I know when we were drafting that, we sort of pulled that from statute. So for that particular one, that sort of matches what is already a statutory requirement of the threat assessment. And so we use the language there, but your point is well taken. And we will go back between first and final and kind of look at that and refine that where we can.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Grissom.
Unfortunately, having lived in this area for a lot of my life, it's one thing about the notification. My question is, we also, I would hope, would want to know about actions taken. And that someplace in there, you got the event, what'd you do? Because that allows you what I call the follow-up piece of it. So because at some point, if it comes back to us, I think we need that record because Hayden may get an inquiry about a certain incident that happens and wants to know, did we know about it and what did we do or what have. So I just would like to see something that it isn't just the one-time event notification, is then knowing what actions were taken as well as part of the reports that we get.
Okay, I've taken a note.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I think very relevant point. My concern is a slippery slope, particularly in terms of being adjoined in some kind of a lawsuit. Given the fact that we have one of our charter schools that has communicated with us and talked about the action steps they've taken because some child was raped or there was sexual abuse, and it goes to court. And they're going, okay, we want to see any and all documents. Okay? And so we were communicated to, or communicated with, I should say. And does that then put the commission at risk?
And that's a fair consideration. I think in response to the policy, I think that is a will of the commission, I think. But as a district, of course, we have statutory obligations that we are already bound to our schools in certain actions. And so there are certain obligations or requirements that will go along with something like that. If that were to occur, that would bind us to what happened there. So this policy is more for us to know, like Tess said, there's autonomy with our schools. We want to know what is happening on campus, what needs to be responded to. But I do hear your point as to considering how, if at all, that binds us to whatever communication is made.
Well,
Absolutely.
can I address, so I mean, I'm saying this as a statement, but it's more of a question. I mean, we have an obligation as a fiduciary body responsible for regulating these entities to be aware, to make sure that our policies ensure that we're aware when something has happened to a child, because there may be actions we need to take. I think we're protected as a body from that, because that's just that's our responsibility. And if we don't know about it, then the question is, why don't we know about it? I think we have to know about it.
And Commissioner Levine, that is the basis of this policy, is that, like I said, there's that autonomy, right? And so we want to make sure that we're clear about when you have to let us know things and what is a reasonable timeline to let us know. Of course, there is emergent situations that you need to deal with in the moment, but you do need to let your district know that these things have occurred. And like I said, our intention here also includes, it goes back to your earlier conversation with the previous committee of sort of publicizing who we are and what we do. If there's something good, we want to be able to have the opportunity to celebrate our schools and their wins as well. So it's not all doom and gloom with this policy, is not our intention, but that is what bubbled to the surface as we talk to our schools.
Well, I'd like to, Madam Chair, if I may, I agree with Tom. I think in reporting to us, if there's something bad that's happened, they need to tell us what's happened and they need to tell staff what's been done about it. I will tell you, I serve as the chair of the Florida Board of Governors, which regulates Florida's 12 state universities. When there was a shooting on the Florida State University campus, one of the first things the president did was call me to make sure I was aware of it and what was happening real time on campus. That helped me because I started getting media calls. So when you say a day later, if something bad's happened, we're going to know about it before they've told us. And that's not the best place to be. You should be the first to know as the regulating entity that something's going on.
Yeah, that was going to be my only suggestion was, I know it says as soon as practical, but within one day, can we say before a news story? Like, I don't really know how to put that in there, but I don't feel like it's super clear that we need to know before it hits the broader public.
I would say immediately. As soon as practical. I don't know what that means.
And I will say that particular language came from some of our operators that, because part of their question was, are we stopping the emergency to talk to the commission? Like, when do we let you know? And so, like I said, this is first reading. This is the language we are suggesting. But now we can go back to our operators and say the commission wants to know immediately. And so that's why we're looking to change the language
It's a
in that
fair
way.
point they're making. And I know what they're saying, right? I mean, that clearly we want them to take care of the problem. But while that problem is happening, it could be on live news. And it could be somebody as part of their response plan. I'm sure they've got somebody that they could identify that is responsible in an emergency for communicating with the commission, just to make sure the commission's aware of it. I don't think that's a secondary issue. I think it's a really important issue because
Madam Chair, one last, and I don't argue, and truly I'm not arguing or even opposed to, again, this issue of the need for immediacy I'm still asking the question about, do we delineate action steps that we're going to take? And if we do, what type of legal jeopardy does that, in fact, again, maybe put us in? So we say that, okay, we need to know within 2 hours, 6 hours, 24 hours, whatever. But there's an urgency there. And then therefore we're going to do this, and that. Do we delineate that also within our policy? That's a question for you, Ashley.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
So that is not delineated in our policy, no.
Right. Should we though? That's my point.
Right.
Should we in fact move that far that says that once we receive this information, we are then going to then move forward to do what?
To that point, I would say where we have leaned historically is, what does the law require us to do? We don't put that in our procedures. If something occurs, there's a law that's attached to it that lays out our obligations, and so we follow that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's impossible to know what the circumstances might be. Once you put something in a policy, if it doesn't match with the circumstances and we don't do it, then you do have jeopardy. So I think the right thing to do is to be told about it. Then we as a body, if staff says we need to meet as a board and talk about it, then the board decides as a body what we want to do, if anything. But generally speaking, what likely would happen in a situation is staff will investigate it and from their perspective, make sure that whatever the school needs to be doing, that it's being done. But if they need us to assemble, we can have an emergency meeting to talk about it if it's something really terrible.
At the same time, do we state that? State that we, in fact, as a board, the chair will look at reconvening a meeting, board meeting. The state.
I would offer that our commission policy, so we have commission policy, I believe it's 1.1 or 1.200, that already sets forth that the chair can convene an emergency meeting when necessary. And so I think we're covered in that policy.
No, your point's well
should
made.
we need to.
So it sounds like there are some suggested changes. So what would you suggest in terms of, do we still need to adopt?
So yes, it would still need a positive recommendation to go to the full commission to
Okay.
vote on first reading so that we can then go back to stakeholders between first and final to adopt any changes.
So we can amend it, we can make the changes at the final reading?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I will do, if this receives a positive vote from the commission, I will integrate those changes, go back to our stakeholders,
I'm-
talk, and then bring it forth for final reading in July.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve.
May I just add one additional thing? I think the language of the last bullet may be problematic where it says may. Directly involves a school that may draw public or media attention. I think that's a hard onus to put on the school of what may draw public attention. A much clearer bright line rule would just be to stop at the end of the full sentence, first sentence of that bullet. Or somehow tailor the second sentence in a way that's, again, I think we're asking a lot of them to judge what may draw media attention.
I would actually, may I?
Yeah.
Say something? I would actually consider removing that bullet, that first sentence. I think if there's a protest, demonstration, or community action that takes place involving the school, period.
Sorry,
we
you
ought
mean
to
the
know
second
about it.
sentence of the bullet?
Yeah, I mean, I would,
Or
the first part, if they get contacted by the news media about something, I don't know that that's an urgent matter for us necessarily from a regulatory standpoint. If the story is something that's bad, then clearly we then may have questions. But so it's a good courtesy to tell us if there's a potential news story about something as opposed to something happened. But the second part, if there's a protest, demonstration, or community action that takes place on the property of or directly involves the school, period, they ought to notify us.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I think Commissioner Levine, I think what we were trying to capture there is, at least in recent times, we've had a number of our schools have had positive news stories run about them that we didn't necessarily find out about until after the fact.
I can think of one negative one.
Commissioner Carter's point earlier in terms of PR and publicity, it'd be nice to know, hey, there's a good piece coming. What can we do to promote that? And get the good news out about whatever that school was or whatever that story was. I think that was what we were trying to capture there in terms of the news media reaching out.
I guess what I'm trying to say, and you can work this in, I think the standard for that's a little different than you have, God forbid, a shooting at a school, I mean, a potentially bad news story, yeah, they ought to tell it, but I'm not sure that falls in the category of immediately. Maybe it's that could be, if there's news inquiry about something that's material, that they shall notify us within a reasonable period of time. I just don't put that in this. I agree with that, but I just don't think that's the same category as something emergent, an arrest of a faculty member or just, a different level of urgency, I think.
Yeah, I agree with the level of urgency. I do know that we have had trouble with instances where events are reported. Nobody knows anything about it. Unfortunately, in today's day and time, the event reporting is very fast and wildly inaccurate. So that if you know that this involves, this set of facts, it's not something that causes you any concern. Then if somebody decides to tell outrageous lies quickly,
Yeah.
it's a lot less of a problem. We're trying to, I don't know how, we need to keep that in mind.
You
'cause
could
that's been
massage that
something-
language a little bit, say,
Yeah.
we do want to know about it. I just think it's a different category of urgency. Maybe that's where you apply the, as soon as practical standard.
I think what makes this all the more complicated today is just the presence of social media and, news propagating through social channels. Is that the news media or not? So what are we characterizing again as a threshold piece of news that would occasion someone to notify us?
Any
Lauren.
further discussion? Oh,
Yeah, just two things. And I'm sorry if I missed this, you may have already said it. Is this based on, certainly school districts have a policy, something like this?
Yes, other school districts do have
And
media
did
policies.
we model that? Did we use that as the
template?
The original language. So if you look at the red line, it was
Yeah.
very minimal. And so that was pulled from other school policies. We have developed this just based on the last 5 years of existing. And as we've grown from 4 schools to 27, we're kind of seeing instances where we need to sort of be informed more of occasions that happen at school campuses.
I mean, we know the problem, there's no way you can go through every scenario or basically, we want to know stuff quickly. Like that's it. Just as the individual, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, if something happens that's significant, we need to know immediately. If that's 5 minutes or 55 minutes and every scenario is different, but we need to know stuff now. And I'm guessing every school board, right? Somebody's making a call to their board chair immediately, and we ought to be number 2. So a lot of this, I think, is I get it, a policy, but a lot of this is common sense and feels like we can over policy stuff and try to, again, but I like it. But again, I think sometimes simple is better. And if the bigger school districts have something very simple, we can keep it there and yeah.
Great. With that, do we have a motion to, to adopt LEA policy 6910 on first reading for the full commission? Is that right, Ashley? All right. Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is approved. The next item on our agenda will be a discussion and vote on changes to Commission Policy 3.400 on final reading. Ashley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Smith. This is our charter school intervention policy. It was brought on first reading at our January meeting. Claire and Maggie went over that at the SPA committee. We have 2 schools currently on intervention. The changes were to align with TDOE standards so that there wouldn't be duplicative work for any schools that were placed on intervention. I will say between first and final reading, there were no changes. And so this policy is ready for a vote on final read.
Great. Any questions or comments before we recommend adoption? Do we have a motion?
So move.
Second? Do we have a second? Sorry. I guess I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is approved. The final item on our agenda will be discussion and vote for Commission Rule 1185-01-01 on first reading. Ashley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Smith. This rule is the replication application rule. If you are feeling a little bit of deja vu, you're not incorrect. The substance of this rule has not changed. The language before you has not changed. It is the same rule that we promulgated last year. A part of the rule-making process is that we are required to go before the Government Operations Committee to seek a positive recommendation to make the rules permanent. We appeared before Government Operations a couple of months ago, and we did not receive the necessary votes to get a positive recommendation. What happens from there is the rule is placed in the omnibus bill to be removed. So then we would have no rule for a replication application, but still have the obligation to process replication applications. So I've spoken with the legislative attorney as well as the Attorney General's office. Their suggestion was to run the rule again. So this rule is before this committee, and if it receives a recommendation before the full commission for a vote, and we will run a rulemaking hearing again and march back up there to try to seek a positive recommendation to make the rule permanent. And I'll happily answer any questions with the assistance of Hayden where I need it.
I think the only thing I'd add is I think there was some confusion in the government operations committee that you were adding some sort of pathway instead of simply adding guardrails to the statute last year. Between the ice storm and the beginning of session, there was a lot packed into one meeting. So I have a feeling that next time around, we'll get it possible.
I just want to let the record reflect, Madam Chair, that in the beautiful Northeast Mountains of Northeast Tennessee, we didn't have an ice storm.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt Commission Rule 1185-01-04 on first reading to the full commission?
Second.
All those in favor, oh, this is a roll call vote. Hayden, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Levine,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Aye.
Madam Chair, you have 3 ayes.
Great, the ayes have it, the motion's approved. All right, the next item on our agenda today is a discussion regarding the election of vice chair of the commission. Per TCA 49-13-105 and Commission Policy 1.100, the chair and vice chair are officers of the commission. Following the departure of former Commissioner Chris Tudor, the vice chair position has remained vacant. The committee is charged with facilitating the election of officers, and I'd like to exercise discretion as chair of the committee to move this item before the full commission for discussion and consideration. So we're basically just moving it to the full committee tomorrow. Do any commissioners have questions before ask them for a motion? Okay.
Do
I
a
have-
motion?
Have a motion?
Yeah.
And the second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, all opposed, no. The ayes have it. Do we have anything else before we adjourn? Okay, thank you all for your attendance and participation of this meeting of the Rules, Policy, and Governance Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. The next meeting of the Rules, Policy, and Governance Committee is scheduled for July 23rd, 2026. If nothing further, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed say no. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
That was exciting.
Okay, we will move into executive session. So we will be waving goodbye to our friends out there in the seats.
That's right.